Hello there folks, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide, where we talk about men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now, one of the areas I love to talk about is gentlemen's watches. It's an area that I'm very passionate about. I love wristwatches, particularly Swiss-made automatic watches, and I've dropped a bit of content in over the last year or so about my own personal pieces and some other watches I've encountered. In other words, those are my friends and family, but I've treated myself to a new watch, but in the process of that, I have discovered a bit more about the watch market, and particularly watches that are waitlisted. And you can see the box in front of me, it's clearly a Rolex, but at the moment, anybody who's tried to buy a professional Rolex wristwatch will know how difficult it is to get hold of them, the waiting lists, and lots of other things which make it very challenging just to even find one of these watches to spend your money on. So I've treated myself to a new piece in the last month or so. I've learned a bit, but let's have a look at what I've bought and then I'll talk to you about that buying experience. So here we go. Here's everybody's favourite plastic box, but as ever, the jewel is inside, and there it is. There you have the Rolex GMT Master II, reference number 126711CHNR, otherwise known as, of course, the Rootbeer. Let's get that out so you can have a proper look at it. Get rid of that. No, I'm not going to, in fact, I shall take him off there as well, just so you can see it properly. There we go, get rid of that. So there we go. Ooh, get the old focus done. Now, Rolex do shine a little bit. They don't have anti-reflective coating. Now, this is not intended as a proper review of this watch. That will come in due course. I haven't owned it that long yet, but as time goes on, I will obviously share my thoughts around this piece with you. This is just some information around this watch so you know more about it, just for the purposes of today. This watch was launched in 2018 at Baselworld, where Rolex and the other big watch manufacturers sort of launched their pieces. This was launched at the same time as the GMT Master II with the blue and red bezel, known as the Pepsi. Hugely popular watch. Everybody wants to get their hands on that. So what can I tell you about this one? Well, it's 40mm case, so very usable case size, much desired by people because of its universal fit to most people. And as you can see, the bezel is finished in two tones, in two colours. That's black at the top and a lovely chocolate brown colour at the bottom to indicate the difference, day and night in the 24-hour range. Now, it is a GMT, which means there is a hand on the dial, not very visible at the moment. It's just at the 2000 hours point, which helps you keep track of that second time zone. So very useful complication. I love GMTs. In fact, I'm wearing one on my other wrist. I'm wearing a Pepsi, but the Tudor version. So very useful pieces, very practical. This one is water resistant to 100 meters. And the big thing with this one, I guess, is that of the gold. So as you can see, this is a two-tone. So stainless steel case, stainless steel bracelet, but with 18 karat rose gold, or as Rolex like to call it, ever rose gold. So it's got 18 karat gold bezel, crown, and of course those center links are made of 18 karat gold as well. So very nice, very beautiful color, brings a nice bit of warmth. Very practical watch, 70-hour power reserve, so you can take it off on a Friday. You'll still be ticking there on a Monday morning when you want to put it back on. It's a certified chronometer, so it keeps time exceptionally well. -2 and +2 seconds per day it's credited with the 3285 movement inside, which is a new movement for Rolex, launched in 2018. So lovely watch. So there you go. Just thought I'd show you on the Oyster bracelet, as you can see, with the Easy Link clasp. So it gives you an extra 5mm of adjustment on the go. So if you've got a warm wrist, and that lovely rose gold shining out through the whole bracelet and on the head of the watch. So there we go, GMT Master II Rootbeer. So why did I add the Rolex GMT Master II Rootbeer to the collection? Well, a couple of reasons. Firstly and foremostly, I've just retired from my lifetime's profession and I wanted a watch that could mark this landmark transition in my life. Something And you know, there's this sort of cliche about having a gold watch on retirement. Well, I couldn't afford a gold watch. I almost went halfway there and bought the bimetal. So it was to mark a transitional moment in my life. I also chose this watch because it's a GMT, and I like the GMT complication. I'm wearing a GMT Tudor at the moment, and I find it wholly useful in modern life. You know, I have other watches which do other things, but the GMT is something which actually delivers hour by hour, day by day when you wear it, because it tracks other time zones. And I also wanted to add a little bit of colour to the collection as well. So the other watches I have in my very small collection of nice watches are all stainless steel, and I wanted something which brought a bit more warmth into the collection, and that's why I went for the Rootbeer. So where did I get it from? Well, these watches are synonymous in being quite difficult to purchase. I think the whole Rolex GMT Master II collection are, particularly the stainless steel models, but even the Rootbeer currently trades for a couple of £1,000 more than its list price on the secondary market, the grey market. So understandably, it's difficult to get hold of these things. So I went to my normal authorised dealer. Now, I say normal, I'm not a big purchaser of jewellery and wristwatches, but over the last few years, I've become particularly interested in quality Swiss wristwatches. And I went to a local authorised dealer. I'm not going to name them because I don't think that's fair, but I go to an AD. It's a single family-owned business in a city near where I live. In the past, I have bought, in the last 2 years, 2 Rolex watches and a Tudor watch from them, as well as some diamond jewellery for my wife. So it's suffice to say I'm a fairly decent customer, and I went in there and I asked about the availability of one of these watches. I've had a great relationship with the sales agents there. They're very honest, decent, honourable people, and we had a conversation, and basically the chap said, you know, at the moment Rolex is nuts, everybody wants them, which is surprising considering the COVID-19 implications of people's employment and financial, you know, stability. But he said the Rolexes have gone off the chart. People are buying them as soon as they come into store. And when it comes to the Rootbeer, there were 21 people on the list ahead of me. He was quite honest, told me this up front, and he said at the current rate at which they receive watches from Rolex, which in the last year was 3 to 4 units per year, I could expect to wait 3 to 4 years, you know, with contingencies. Obviously, people on the list changing their minds, sourcing watches from somewhere else, dying or whatever. So 3 to 4 years being realistic about it. I'm absolutely entirely grateful for their frankness and honesty. But I said, look, you know, go ahead, put me on the list. If something comes up, I'll be grateful. I'm ready to buy. Just let me know. But I accept that there's going to be, you know, a long wait, if at all. And that was it. I walked away thinking, you know, I was a bit crestfallen. I thought, well, it's not going to happen by the time I retire. But there we go. So a week or so later, I was in a large shopping mall on the outskirts of another city, not far from where I live, and there's a goldsmith store. Now, if you live in the UK, goldsmiths are part of the Watches of Switzerland group, huge group of jewellery stores, watch stores around the UK. So I tripped in there. They've never got anything decent in their window. You know, it's literally two-tone Datejusts at any given time. They'll have the odd Yacht Master or, you know, solid gold Daytona, which will be, you know, 30, 40, 50 grand, whatever. Pretty much unattainable by anybody who's interested in these watches. So I walked in there just to have a look around and saw the manager there, who I'd previously spoken to in the past, no relationship whatsoever. I'd never bought anything from that store before. So I sat down with him and he said, what are you interested in? And quite honestly, I said, look, you know, I'd love to get a GMT Master II, but I appreciate, you know, you're never going to have anything in any reasonable time frame for me because you're in a large retail area in this big mall. You must have a huge throughput of people asking the same question. And he said, look, let's sit down and have a chat. So I explained that it was a retirement piece, and full disclosure, I knew I was going to have a chat with this fella in advance. So I dressed up fairly well. I was wearing a jacket and I looked, you know, presentable. I was also wearing a Rolex Submariner. I was wearing a professional Rolex watch. because I wanted to convey to this fellow that I wasn't a time waster, you know, a tire kicker. I was somebody, I looked smart. I'm not saying I looked like I had money, because I don't have money, I'm not well off. You know, I save up and I buy things when I've considered my purchases, but I looked as if I could afford the purchase. And I was also wearing a watch from the professional range in the Rolex catalogue, which is also hard to get hold of. So this guy knew I was an authentic watch aficionado. I wasn't some guy who's going to go and buy this watch and flip it a week later and take the profit. They don't want that, clearly. And obviously I made it very clear it was for a special occasion in my life. So he sat down and said, look, you know, situation is this. Yeah, I think we'll be able to do something for you in a reasonable time frame. And I was quite taken back. You know, I said, well, I'd had a conversation in another authorised dealer who I'd previously, you know, patronised. I'd bought quite a number of watches from, and he said, no chance for 3 or 4 years. And he said, well, you know, reality is we're a much larger organisation. We have a huge throughput of watches. The COVID-19 situation is actually, as it's closed down opportunities for some people, it's opened them up for others. And I will try and get you a piece for this special occasion. And hopefully, he said, and he was quite frank, hopefully it will be the beginning of a future fruitful relationship for both of us, which I thought was quite telling, because it implies, you know, this is a watch which they will sell me with the hope that I will come back time and time again. My wife was with me, you know, and he noted she was wearing a Rolex as well, diamond studded sort of Datejust, nothing special, but you know, he knew that we were people who liked watches, so a relationship going forward could be beneficial for them. Took my name, I walked out thinking, there we go, if I hear from them, I will. If I don't, I don't. Nothing lost, nothing ventured. So a couple of days later, well, that's not true, a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from the manager, again, chap I'd spoken to, and said, you know, Mr. Jones, good news, a Rolex Rootbeer is coming into stock this week, and I've got it earmarked for your retirement. It'll be ready for you for your retirement. You just come and collect it. I was absolutely flabbergasted, you know, that this so-called waitlisted watch was something I was able to achieve in 2 to 3 weeks. So I tripped along to the store the following Saturday and yeah, bought the watch. It was a very special moment, as it always is when you buy a lovely Rolex, you know. And yeah, I felt I got what I wanted. It was delightful, beautiful piece. Absolutely love it, as you've seen. Wonderful piece. But whilst I was there, I took the opportunity to have a chat with this fellow and said, how did this happen? You know, these watches are still retailing on Chrono24 eBay for, you know, £14,000-15,000 when I was able to buy it from an authorised dealer within a couple of weeks. You know, why would people pay these premiums if they can buy them in store in such a short wait? And he said it's an unusual time. A lot of people obviously are financially bereft because of the COVID situation. He said, but Rolex is still, you know, making the watches. And if you think about it, he said a lot of people who may have been ahead of you on the list are now no longer financially liquid. And also another big thing is that Watches of Switzerland stores are the largest retailer of Rolex watches in the United Kingdom, and that throughput that they have puts them in a far better position to fill orders for people like myself who are, you know, talking about special occasion watches rather than just speculators going in. So he said, you know, this is something, a considered good relationship going forward for us. You're the sort of customer that we want. So, you know, we will prioritise these watches for people for special occasions. And additionally, and an interesting point was that he said, when you think about it as well, one of the biggest outlets for expensive wristwatches, Rolex any brand, are the airports. People love buying watches at airports. They're obviously duty-free or VAT-free, wherever you live in the world, whatever situation you find yourself in. Obviously, you need to declare them when you return to your home nation and pay the appropriate value-added tax or taxation. Some people don't. I'm not going to comment on that. But he said people buy a lot of watches at airports, and authorised dealers at airports take a huge amount of the stock of Rolex. And of course, there's nobody really travelling globally by air these days because of the global pandemic. So all of those watches which were earmarked for those stores in authorised dealers at airports are now being routed out to other authorized dealers, and we're able to fill orders that much quicker. And I was, yeah, it makes absolutely perfect sense. I queried him, I said, you know, how long could you turn around a Pepsi then if I came in here and asked for a Pepsi? He said, you know, realistically, it would be in the region of 12 months, whereas you'll be quoted 5 years perhaps somewhere else. But good relationship with a customer will get you that watch that much quicker. So there we go. I've got myself a new watch. I will review this watch in greater depth when I've had it on my wrist for a little bit longer. I've only had it for a month and it's still bedding in. At the moment, I'm loving it, but let's give it a proper appraisal and then we'll talk about it more fully in a future video. But I thought I'd bring this information to you though, because if you're in a position where you're thinking about making a landmark purchase of a watch to mark a special occasion, now might be the time. I know you might be thinking, maybe not, you know, but this is an unusual, unprecedented moment in human history, and it has affected the watch market. Positively for some people, negatively for others, clearly. But I thought I'd share that with you today so that you could be forearmed if you're in a position where you're thinking about making a purchase. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video today and enjoyed meeting my new friend here on the table. If you have, please give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment in the comment section below, and subscribe for future watch related and other material that we produce here on the channel. Until the next time we meet, take care of yourselves.